I'll go podcast. Take one.
So our budgets are getting bigger, so we've got more help. So that was my youngest daughter, Logan. Once again, this is the All Go podcast. I am your host, Desmond Upshaw. Thanks so much for joining me. Before we get started, please like and subscribe. I would definitely appreciate it. Working on putting more and more videos and content out for you. So please do that. I would definitely appreciate it. And this episode is brought to you by plrlive.com. I will put a link down in the description, but it is a place where you can get digital products, ebooks, and you get reseller rights to it. So you can buy them for whatever the price is and resell them as your own and mark them up. So definitely check them out as well. Today, want to talk about the Brooklyn Nets. They had a game yesterday, Friday. They lost to the Raptors. And it was a weird game. Kevin Durant didn't start in the game. There was some issues potentially with COVID and some contact tracing, I believe. He ended up coming into the game in the first quarter. So he did play. Didn't do anything spectacular. I think he had maybe 8 points. And then later in the game, I believe in the third or fourth quarter, he actually got pulled out of the game as well. Due to, once again, the COVID restriction. So I think the backstory was early on they were waiting on a test result to come back, and it seemed like when he was put in the game that he would be fine as far as the contact tracing goes and him not having any concerns or anything, or the staff not having concerns. And then it sounds like the test of that person did come back positive. So then Kevin Durant had to not only leave the game, but he had to leave the floor as well. So he had to go back to the locker room. So really odd and weird situation, which after, we talk about the Nets game, we'll kind of talk about the All-Star game and just my thoughts on that. But Brooklyn ends up losing the game. They lost, I think, by 5 or 6 points. I really don't think the Brooklyn Nets are going to work. As of right now, I think they will definitely need to get another big man who can play defense. DeAndre Jordan is a big. He's athletic. He can play defense, but he's not what he used to be. He's getting older, and I feel like they truly need a rim protector because Kyrie and James Harden are not interested in playing defense at all. And people can try to tell me that, James Harden was 5th in steals or recovered passes last year. I don't really care about that. Can you stay in front of your man and keep him from having a layup line? Because it doesn't seem like he can or wants to do it. Whichever the reason is, I guess that doesn't matter as much as it's just not getting done. And the same with Kyrie. I just don't understand for guys who are just incredibly talented and gifted offensively, why it's so hard for them to play defense. I don't understand it. And I get not wanting to absolutely, tax yourself to where you can't play on the offensive end, but it's got to be better than this. I believe the guards from Toronto, Kyle Lowry scored 30. I think Norman Powell was like another 18 points, and you can't give up those types of points. And then also on the flip side for Harden and Kyrie, they just didn't have a great game scoring the ball. Harden, I think, had 16 or 17 and 12 assists. So he's doing a really good job of distributing. But the defensive end is just going to be the demise of this team. Like, if you can't beat the Raptors, then you don't have championship aspirations. And I do understand that this is just a regular season game. This is not the end-all, be-all, and this is not the playoffs or anything like that. But it's just difficult for me to think that a team that has never been together that they're going to flip a switch when it comes time for playoffs. Like, you saw that with Golden State for their run that they were going on. That they had some lulls in the regular season, but that team had been together. They had played together. They had already won a championship together. So for them to be able to flip a switch, I think is more realistic than this Brooklyn Nets team. They're still trying to feel each other out. like I said, this first year of them playing together. I know Kevin Durant and Harden played together in Oklahoma City, but that was a long time ago. I believe it was 10 years ago. So it's until they get dialed in on the defensive end, there's no way that that these guys are going to win a championship. Also, too, with Kevin Durant not closing it, being there for the game, the game was pretty tight late, and it just for Kyrie and Harden just not making great decisions with the basketball. I just really don't think that this Nets team as constructed today is going to work because they just give up so many points, and you need to be essentially flawless on the offensive end in order to win games. And we know that in the playoffs, in the NBA, the game slows down. You're not scoring, 130, 140 points in a game. It really slows down, comes down to the half court game. And if, Durant, Harden, and Kyrie aren't all playing their A+ game, they're going to lose. So it'll be interesting to see what happens. As I mentioned, I would definitely think about getting a big man there, especially a guy who specializes on the defensive end and rebounding. I've heard some things with Andre Drummond potentially going to the Nets. It sounds like Cavs may buy him out. I think he'd be a good addition for the Nets. I think he's a guy that was a max player with the Pistons, but talent-wise, I don't think he's a max player. And I think when guys as role players are joining teams with championship aspirations, they're typically willing to take a little bit less when it comes to contracts and things like that. So we'll see what happens. But I think the Nets definitely need to make another move to get a big man. So with Kevin Durant and the COVID situation, it brings me to the All-Star game, which I'm not quite sure why the NBA is dead set on having an All-Star game. It doesn't seem like there's any guys in the NBA that are thrilled for it. You've heard LeBron James comments about it, which, that's a guy that you definitely want to be on your side of the decision. No pun intended. But he had mentioned that he doesn't have energy for it. He's not excited for it at all. He'd prefer not to do it. I know De'Aaron Fox had an interview, and he had mentioned he thought it was stupid that they would have it. And I kind of agree. I mean, I understand like the wanting the excitement and things like that, but it just, you're going to be in Atlanta. I think it's in March. I think it's early March, but I just don't understand why the NBA wants to do it. To me, it seems more potential harm than good, especially when you look at how the contact tracing and the COVID protocols are happening now. I mean, you've got Kevin Durant, who didn't start the game, was able to play, call it 2.5 quarters, and then had to be pulled from the game and leave the sideline. Like, I just, to me, that you're only spelling disaster because the guys don't want to do it. And then also with the COVID protocols, it just doesn't seem like there's a good plan put in place to get this done. I mean, last year, we had the bubble, so it was very different. Obviously, we didn't have the All-Star game, but it just doesn't seem like there is going to be a good plan to put in place to have the All-Star game. So I'm going to be watching the situation, see what happens, but we'll see. I don't think it'll go over well, but we'll see what happens. The NBA, they do a pretty good job overall. I mean, with the response to COVID with the bubble was pretty good. I know they had a break in between, but it was just something unprecedented that we hadn't seen before. So I thought they did a phenomenal job with that and just adjusting to everything. Thought they should have given the NBA players a little bit more time off, but it kind of is what it is. Here we are, and we're gonna move forward. So I'll be kind of checking out that situation and seeing what happens with it. But that is it for me. Thank you so much for hanging out till the end. Please, once again, like and subscribe as I'm working on putting out more content for you. So that's another one. Appreciate your time.